How's it going, everyone? It's your favorite host from the Big Apple Hockey. I am Anthony LRock from the fourth period. Don't worry, secret safe for me. I won't tell the other guys that I'm your favorite. But just figured I had some time here on a Saturday to jump on you guys and talk some hockey. So whether you want to talk Rangers, Islanders, rest of the league, doesn't matter. I got you guys covered. Um, I guess we'll start with the fact that the New York Rangers are playing a big game against Carolina Hurricanes today, Game 4, Stanley Cup quarter semifinals to move on to the conference finals with another win. So that's really the most pressing game on tap for tonight. And I think this is a series that I would say a lot of people or most people expected to go at least 6 or 7 games, and while it still could, it's looking like that the New York Rangers could sweep the Carolina Hurricanes, which would be a huge surprise. This is a game that they always say, the cliche. It's hardest to close out and win the fourth game of a series. I believe that's certainly true. The team that's against the ropes usually comes out with their best effort. I.e., first round, you saw the Islanders down 3-0 against the Hurricanes, and they won a game in double overtime to extend the series. So, these guys on the other end, the Hurricanes, they're certainly going to come out with desperation. And I expect them to play their best game of the series. Truthfully, I thought last game the Hurricanes kind of, they controlled the play for the majority of the game. They were heavily out shooting the Rangers, but Igor Shesterkin stood on his head and gave the Rangers a chance to win. So, don't know if you could expect any lineup changes for the Hurricanes tonight. I think anytime you're down 3-0, you would at least expect some changes. But I think ultimately, like I said, the Hurricanes are going to come out and play their best game. And, for the Rangers, it's just really about keep doing what they're doing. They're getting timely goals. They're getting great goaltending. If you looked at our Big Apple Hockey Twitter account before, I tweeted out that the Rangers have shut out Sebastian Aho. He does not have a goal in this series. Yes, he has a couple of points, but no goals, and that's really impressive because Sebastian Aho is what really makes the Hurricanes go, and the Rangers are really giving him nothing. So now there certainly are some advantages. If they can pull off the sweep tonight of the Hurricanes, they would get some rest. As it looks like, the Bruins and the Panthers series is turning out to be very physical. So added rest for the Rangers, and those teams getting further banged up, whichever one advances, would be good for the Rangers. So preferably, yes, you do want to close it out for many reasons. One, you don't want to give the Hurricanes, any hope at all that they can get back into the series. And the other thing is, like I just alluded to, for the Rangers, you want to try to get some rest. This time of year, it's normal for pretty much every guy on the roster to be a little banged up. So the rest certainly can't hurt. But your Rangers are in a good position here to go, an 8-0 to start the playoffs, which is pretty crazy, really impressive. And I think if you're a Ranger fan, this so far this playoffs has gone even better that you could have hoped for. Because again, the Hurricanes are a really solid hockey team, and the Rangers are taking it to them. But the beautiful part about our game and the NHL and hockey is that the error for margin, they're really, really, really slim. Every game this series has been decided by one goal. And the Islanders and sorry, not the Islanders, the Rangers, unfortunately for them, are on the winning side of that. But good teams win close games, and I think the Rangers are the beautiful part about being a podcast is I'm always being a dad too. So I'm like, what's up? No, they're not. No, I think that the Hurricanes kind of got to be discouraged that they're down 3-0, but yet they've only lost a game by one goal. And I think eventually it comes to a point where you kind of get disheartened and you try to take their heart out of it. And I think that's what they're feeling there on the other side. But my kind of, if I was a Ranger fan, or if you are a Ranger fan, you probably want to try to hope that not only you close out the series, but the Bruins can somehow beat the Panthers. Because if that happens, I think the Rangers' chances of beating the Bruins are a lot higher than they would if they played Florida. But ultimately, you can't really worry about that. You just control what you can control. But I think that, and I'm not trying to jinx them, but I think if they were to play the Bruins in the next round, that would be their ticket to the Stanley Cup final because not take anything away from Boston, but they're a older, slower, more of a prodding team, whereas the Panthers are a little bit of a fast, highly skilled, and similar to Carolina, a little bit of a buzzsaw. But, one step at a time. Firstly, the Rangers have to close out the Hurricanes tonight. My gut says they do. You know, Similar to the series against the Islanders, they squeaked one out, and certainly for a team as good as the Hurricanes, that could certainly happen. But my guess here is that the Rangers just close it out tonight and advance to the conference final for what the second time in 2 years, 2022, they in the conference final, and we all know what happened there against the Lightning. So the Rangers certainly have a great window here, and I think that for them again, it's about just closing this out and getting rest and just preparing for either the Bruins or the Panthers. But one thing I do want to point out is that the Hurricanes made the switch to Kochetkov after they got to Anderson for the first two games, and I wonder if that was the right move. I know you got to change things up when you're down 2-0, but I think that maybe if they would have stuck with Anderson, who knows? Maybe Game 3 plays out differently. And that's not that Kochetkov played bad, but I think that Anderson's still the better goalie. Maybe it was a little prematurely. For me, if I was Rod the Bod, I probably would have went back to Anderson, and then if they lost again, which they did, then maybe you switch to Kochetkov being down 3-0, because at that point, I mean, why the hell not? But we'll see what he does if he goes back to Anderson for today's game with their backs against the wall. He didn't really divulge much, so we won't see till the Hurricanes come out on the ice for warm-ups. Mike is saying, been listening to some Canes YouTube channels, and they aren't sounding happy with Rod's performance. I think a lot of times, when you're in this situation, naturally, the fans are going to be critics and they're going to voice their displeasure. But I don't know if I necessarily agree that Brindamore has done anything or pushed the wrong buttons to warrant any sort of criticism. I think he's a fantastic coach. There's a reason why he's viewed as one of the best. Now, his Hurricanes teams have never gotten over the hump before. I don't necessarily think that's on him. But I am curious to see what happens. If you guys recall, a couple of weeks ago, there were some reports that the Hurricanes, pulled their offer for Rod Brindamore to extend him. And a couple of days later, it seemed like it was back on track, and there was almost a little bit of a handshake agreement. But nothing's been announced. And now that could be just not to allow for a distraction, as he wants to focus on the playoffs. But I also wonder, maybe if it's truly not done, and then if his team gets swept, who knows, stranger things have happened, and maybe he does hit the market, in which case, you're going to have a lot of teams with openings flocking towards him, asking for permission to interview him. So if the Hurricanes do bail out tonight and get eliminated, I'm curious to see in which direction that goes with Brindamore. Like I said, if he hits the open market, and if he does, watch out for Seattle. Ron Francis, obviously, have ties together with the Hurricanes from 2006. If he becomes available, I think he's going to go hard after Brindamore, and I think he would be the Kraken's next coach. But we'll see what happens there. But no, to get at the root of it, I don't think that Brindamore has been a problem at all. Is Hedo's game time decision? Yes, he is. And that's unfortunate to see, being that he just came back in the lineup after missing so much time. I don't think it has anything to do with his prior injury. So that's good news for the Rangers, but we'll see if Hedl gets into the lineup. But my guess is, if it is an injury, even if it's unrelated to his previous one, they're going to probably play it super careful with him, just because he has been out for so long, and they don't want to risk further injury. So that tilt, I think, starts at 7 o'clock tonight between the Rangers and the Hurricanes, as the Rangers look to close out the Hurricanes in 4 games. And then the other game on tap tonight is the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. That's a 10 o'clock start, as the Avalanche look to take a 2-1 lead as they go back home. But some other news and notes from around the league at this time of year. As you guys all saw, the Toronto Maple Leafs had their season-ending media availability with the executives, Brendan Shanahan, Pelly, the new CEO, and Brad Treliving. And if you read the tea leaves on that one, it seems like they are finally not going to run it back. And one member of the core four will be looked to be moved this offseason. Now we all know who that's likely going to be, either Mitch Marner or John Tavares. It seems like from what everyone is saying that Marner would be the odd man out. Now the key to that is that Marner has a full no movement clause as well, so he might be slightly easier to convince to waive it than Tavares. Whereas I think if they approach him, I think that's going to be a hard no from Tavares. I don't see him agreeing to leave Toronto, which is unfortunate for the Maple Leafs because I think if you had to choose between one, you keep Marner all day and you move Tavares. He's aging. He's slower. His point totals kind of dropped this season, and if you're able to move him, that would help him a lot. Help a lot with the salary. But because I think he's going to stay steadfast and not waiving it, I think they're going to be forced to really try to push Marner to waive his no movement clause. And with the way that the fans in Toronto have basically been talking about Marner ever since his comments after the season ended about being viewed as gods, combined with his poor playoff performance, I think they're going to try to run him out of town. So while Marner has said he loves Toronto, I think if they come to him and they express that he's not in their plans, I think he'll agree to waive. Because let's face it, guys, it's human nature. When you're not wanted somewhere, chances are you're going to want to go somewhere where you're valued and they want you. So I think if Toronto conveys that, I think Marner won't put up too much of a fight there, and he'll waive his no move clause, and he'll move on. But the caveat to that is, he's not going to waive for any old team. You got to imagine he's going to want to go to a team that has a chance to win. You hear Chicago's name thrown around, and yes, they have Connor Bedard and they're rebuilding, and they will be good again someday. While Marner's not old, he's 27. I don't think he wants to go to a team where he's going to sit around and have to wait 3-4 years to compete for a cup. So that's the other issue: finding a team that he would go to, and you also have the cap space to acquire him. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to keep an eye on as the summer and off season approaches. But my guess is that Mitch Marner won't be a Toronto Maple Leaf much past the draft. I would say maybe by July 1st. Joe Strang is saying that the Devils are looking at Sheldon Keefe. Yes, I believe it was either Dreger or Pierre LeBrun reported that the Devils asked for permission to speak to Keefe, and they got that permission. So it looks like the Devils will likely be talking to him about their vacancy. I also heard Craig Berube tied to the Devils, which he's also being tied to the Maple Leafs. So I think a lot of these teams that have vacancies are looking at the same candidates here. Like saying Tavares has run masterclass on how to be a selfish player. Hard to deny that. This is a guy that clearly kind of willed his way to Toronto. And while I believe him back in the day when he said that it was a really hard decision to make and he loved the island, I do believe he was being sincere in that. I just think he knew all along he was going to go to Toronto, and he really handcuffed the Islanders there. So, and that's why Islander fans still hate him to this day. Not that because he left, because how he did it. And it's looking like he may kind of do the same thing with this time around. Not agreeing to leave and staying into Toronto. So we'll see what plays out there. And also, Mike, that's something that I think is a possibility. Lou Lamoriello drafted Mitch Marner back in 2015. Lou Lamoriello also showed interest in trying to acquire Marner back in the summer of 2019 when he was a restricted free agent. So I think if Marner does indeed hit the market and waves, I think Lou will reach out to him, to the Maple Leafs for that matter, and see if they could work something out. But uh, ultimately, what it comes down to Mitch Marner is, what's going to be the cost to acquire him. I think many people kind of look at Mitch Marner and, they see his point totals and see how he's been an elite player in the league and automatically assume he's going to cost an arm and a leg. But there's a lot of things that go into moving a player like him where going to return like a ridiculous amount. And I'm not saying he's going to get pennies on the dollar either, but when you consider that he has one more year left at his salary, which is I think is what 10 point something or close to $11 million. That's hard to move. Not many teams have that cap space. And then on top of that, any team trading for him is staring down the barrel of having to give him, $11 to $12 million on a contract extension. So I think those two factors are going to affect his trade value. So in any trade that you see Marner go for, I don't think Marner is going to return like a blue chip prospect, like as an example, like Logan Stankoven from Dallas. I think they're going to move him for top pairing defenseman or maybe a legit starter, but I don't think they're going to get like a slew of picks, prospects, and all these ridiculous pieces from Marner when you consider his contractual status. Wicked is saying, first, I don't see that he'll come here. We don't have the cap space prospects, and I think he has a no trade clause. Yes, he does. He has a no movement clause. But prospects, Wicked, don't come into the equation here. Toronto isn't looking to rebuild. In any trade for Mitch Marner, you are going to see at least what I think is a similar deal that we saw for the Adam Larson for Taylor Hall deal way back when, where it's a 1-for-1. So the Islanders not having prospects, personally, in my opinion, does not apply here when it comes to Mitch Marner. I think it's going to be a 1-for-1 or a player going back to Toronto, maybe a first round pick as well. So I think that in that regard, it's not an issue for the Islanders. As for the cap space, the Islanders have $6 million of cap space to play with. So if they were to, let's say, move Ryan Pollock in the deal for Mitch Marner, who makes I think a little over $6 million, that goes a long way with fitting Marner. So if they send out a salary like that, they can fit him. Again, it just all depends on what kind of player that the Leafs are looking for. Certainly aren't getting like Noah Dobson or even a similar player for Marner. There's no way the Leafs are getting a 24-year-old defenseman who still has RFA status that's making pennies on the dollar could compare to what his value on the ice. So we'll see what happens there. Just to be saying, look at the Cans and faces after Game 3. Yeah, for sure they're disheartened. They're a little bit shell shocked. They didn't expect to be down 3-0 in this round. For them, I'm sure the belief in the room was that they were going to win the series, or at the very least, it was going to be really close. And that it hasn't gone that way for the Hurricanes. And what I was referring to, I think, before he came on is, sometimes it's just when you're down 3-0 and the games have been so close and you come out on the losing side of it, it's a little disheartening. And I think it takes the wind out of your sails. So I certainly think a little bit of that is going on inside the Hurricanes locker room. With that said, though, their season's on the line. I expect them to come out and play their best game tonight. Dominic Kim, a little joke there. Marner's too young for Lou. Yeah, I think while he has had the propensity of having an older team, I do think he's also shown that he does want to get younger and faster. When he traded for Bo Horvat, he's not an old guy; he brings a lot of speed to the game. So I think if it's doable, he'll try to get Marner. And Mike saying, question not tonight, just in general, for Rangers get a 5-on-3 power play, does Lavia put Rempe on there to screen the goalie? It's a good question. You have seen cases where, like for instance, Vancouver, Nikita Zadorov gets put on the power play, even though he's defenseman. He gets put in front of the net to kind of screen the goalie. So yeah, but I don't think so. I think that the Rangers power play and special teams have been really controlling the game so much that I don't think they're gonna tamper with anything. I think they're gonna leave well enough alone. But it isn't a bad idea. Um, like saying I want it to happen. Yeah, I get it, and I also get being pessimistic because let's face it. The Islanders over the last few years have kind of been teased. You guys remember, I'm sure you Ranger fans remember very well, but before the Rangers signed Artemi Panarin on July 1st, on June 30th, a lot of the big boys like Bob McKenzie and Elliot Friedman were reporting it was that Artemi Panarin was likely going to sign with the Islanders. That didn't happen. We also last year, uh, TSN, LeBron and Pagnotta, some other guys said that Gaudreau was down to the Devils and the Islanders, and he ended up signing with Columbus. So, yeah, always kind of in the mix for top guys, and not coming away with them. So I get being not optimistic it will happen. But I do think that if Marner is available, Lou is going to call. Now this is a question that it's very polarizing between a lot of Islander fans and varying opinions. Um, Listen, yes he is 81. That is old, and you can make the case that the kind of like the game is passing him by. But at the same time, it's not like he's senile, or he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, which some people kind of over exaggerate. So I certainly think he still is with it mentally, and he is a bright hockey mind. But I do think that maybe it's time to get a fresher set of eyes in the general manager role. Um, and that's not because he's done a bad job. If you look at the Islanders since Lou took over in 2018, you could say that this stretch, the last 5-6 years, has been their best stretch since the dynasty years. I mean, the only other closest way was when they made the playoffs a couple times with Tavares when they won the first playoff series. But I think this recent stretch of years, the Islanders have been the closest they have been in a long time, and a lot of that is because Lou Lamoriello pushed some of the right buttons. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question in summary, I think the people that want him to go certainly have valid points, but at the same time, he hasn't been nearly as bad as some of the pessimistic fans have made him out to be. Um, no, yeah, and I get what you're saying. I know you're not just talking strictly about age. Um, but again, not doing a good job. I mean, yes, he's made some questionable decisions, but also too, his team made it to back-to-back conference finals. And when that happens, you're doing something right. The Bull Horvat trade was really good. Horvat was fantastic for them this year. So he's done good, but he's also, like I said, he's had some questionable decisions with some like trading Devon Taves. Um, just to name one, this 7-year extensions to Mayfield Engvall, that was certainly questionable. Uh, so yeah, he's certainly not perfect, but he's also not as bad, I think, as again some fans make him out to be. But whether they like it or not, he's back for another year. If he stays any longer than that, honestly, that's I think that's on him, because I could tell you firsthand that I know for sure ownership thinks too highly of him just because of who he is and his past reputation, that they absolutely will not fire this guy. Lou Lamoriello is only going to leave if he decides to walk away on his own, and I think that's just the really the harsh nature of it. He'll call it quits when he thinks he's ready. Lou's never been really good at player acquisition when it comes to free agents. Yeah, and that's fair to say. I mean, even if you look at his tenure here with the Islanders, a lot of his good acquisitions have been through trades. Pajot, Palmieri, Horvat, they've all come through trades. I would say his best free agent signing um, was probably I mean, I guess Varlamov, right? Varlamov was probably his best free agent signing. I mean, Varlamov was fantastic before Sorokin came over. So I think for sure that's probably his best signing since he's been here. But Mike, I do agree. He seems to be better at at making trades than signing players. And we all know his 15-year contract at Kovalchuk when he was in New Jersey. That was really probably his biggest signing. No, I think a lot of Islander fans would hate this, and I don't think anybody wants to see Chris Lamoriello as a general manager. And that's not necessarily a slight on him. I just think, if he's going to move on, get a guy who has a lot of experience being a general manager at the NHL level. Ray Shero, I know he's a general manager. I don't think really he got a fair shake after he got let go from his job. Or Kevin Weeks, I hear, is kind of in contention for a new role whenever that happens. So I would much rather see a general manager of that ilk than his son. Yeah, you don't want to be sleeping with the fishes if he fires him. Um, Certainly something that could come into play there. And yeah, Wicked, you're right. Valtteri Filppula, in the 1 year that he was there, he was good for the Islanders, actually. I think he scored close to 20 goals, I think, in the year he was there, 17 or so. So he was a good signing. But again, that was more of an under the radar signing. Lou Lamoriello hasn't had like a huge monstrous signing since he's been with the Islanders. He's come close a couple times, but hasn't happened. And what I was saying, Florida, and yes, that's what I was saying kind of at the beginning of the stream. I think if you're a Ranger fan, you want to see the Bruins beat the Panthers, and again, that's not a slight on Boston. It's just the fact that Boston's a slower team, albeit I think they're more physical. But I think the Rangers would have their way with Boston if they met in the conference final. Whereas Florida, the Rangers could very well beat them too. But I think if they played the Panthers, I think the Panthers would give them fits just because they're fast, and like the Rangers, they're also highly skilled. And not saying Boston or Carolina for that matter aren't, but Florida. If you look up and down the roster, I mean, Matt Tkachuk, Sam Reinhart had a fantastic year, and you got Carter Verhaeghe, Anton Lundell. They got Sam Bennett plays a sandpaper game and a skilled player. The Panthers certainly have a lot of skill. So I think that honestly that would be one hell of a series to watch. I'd be all for it. I mean, I'd be kind of pumped watching two of the top teams battle it out with a ticket to the Stanley Cup final on the line. I think that'd be fabulous. But ultimately, I think Florida gets by Boston. I know Boston has it's close right now, 2-1. But I think Florida ultimately moves on to the conference final. Yeah, I had Dallas and Carolina, which it's looking like I'm going to be certainly wrong on that end. So I might as well throw my bracket in the garbage. But yeah, Rangers Avalanche certainly could happen, and that would be one hell of a series too. Because I mean, my goodness, Colorado could. I mean, the way they play the game with how much speed they have, and Nathan McKinnon's on a different level. So we saying Boston looks cooked. Yeah, I thought when they kind of really took it to Florida in the game they won, I thought that, I thought to myself, oh, maybe Florida's in for a series here. But I think Florida last night kind of snuffed out any idea that Boston can win the series. I mean, Florida just, ran them up and down the ice last night. My buddy Phil, our fellow co-host. Yeah, no, I don't think Boston wins the series either. I mean, I think Florida's winning this series. I was surprised that Florida took it to them in what was that game 2 that they won. No, sorry, game 1. Boston won game 1. Florida won game 2. But I think that I don't think anybody expected Boston to really beat them in the manner in which they did. But again, Boston is an experienced team. They have a really good goaltender in Jeremy Swayman, so it's not like they're devoid of skill. But I think Florida is going to beat them for sure. Let's see. Mike saying Jaws must be giddy with his Panthers. Yeah, how can you know the Florida Panthers? I mean, your team is looking like they could get over the hump. They got close last year, and it looks like this year they're have a very good shot of going back to the final again. So they're certainly going to have some competition, and in the form of what's looking like it's going to be the Rangers, and they have to get by the Bruins first. But the Panthers, honestly, the Panthers scare me more than the Hurricanes did. If I was a Ranger fan, but like I said just before, that would be a hell of a series if the Rangers and the Panthers met in the finals. Um, yeah, this too, that would be something. The Rangers Nucks rematch in '94. So many parallels to '94. The Knicks in '94. OJ in '94. Um, so a lot of stuff in that nature going on, but that would be a good series too, though. But I think if the Rangers played the Canucks in the final, that the Rangers would beat them. I think in terms of the Western Conference, if you're kind of measuring the Rangers up against with who's left out there, um, I think they would. I think they would beat the Oilers for sure. That's no knock on McDavid and Draisaitl and company. They're outstanding. I think they would beat Vancouver. I think Dallas or Colorado, but they're playing each other, so it would only be one of them. I think those two teams are the two Western Conference teams that are left that would give the Rangers the most trouble. Dallas in particular, because Dallas had I think eight eight players who had 20 goals or more. And I think out of those eight, there were two of them that had 30 or more. So they're a really deep team. They have guys that could score on every single line. Jake Gottinger, well, his numbers are down from last year. He's still one of the better young goalies in the league. He's certainly emerged into that category. And then defense, they got a lot of skill in defense. Thomas Harley had, I think, 15 goals, and you have Heiskanen who leads that group. Esa Lindell, so they're good on the back end. I think, me personally, I think Dallas is going to get by Colorado, but I think Dallas and the Rangers would be hell of a series. That would be fun to watch. Um, Mike, this is a good question. What do you think happens to the Oilers if they don't make the conference finals? I think they're similar to the Maple Leafs in the sense that if they fail to get over the hump again, at what point do you make changes? But the difference is with the Oilers is that you know they don't have that core four per se as Toronto does, that so blatantly obvious isn't working. So if the Oilers fail to make it again, I think for them it's just they're going to have to, make their defense better. I know they tried to make strides in that category when they traded for, Matthias Ekholm. But if they lose, I think you would need to see them get more depth on defense. Um, and then same thing, for them, goal too, right? I mean, Stuart Skinner, I think, he kind of, I don't want to say emerged, but he had a solid year for the Oilers. The only question is it enough? I don't know. I don't know if Stuart Skinner is the guy that you go to the promised land with. But then again, honestly, I mean, the Blues won with Jordan Binnington, and the Avalanche won with Darcy Kemper. So who knows? Maybe they can win with Stuart Skinner, but I do question if they would make a change in goal if they fail again. But I think their more pressing issue um, would be their defense. And the other thing to that is, and I think Phil, myself, Phil, and Marc have talked about it in streams, in the past, is that if the Oilers keep failing, at what point do kind of like Draisaitl and McDavid look at each other and and say, at what point do they ask out? I mean, both their contracts are starting to wind down. I think one of them has 2 years left, and I think another one has maybe a year left. I think it's Draisaitl has another year left on his contract. But you wonder if they don't win, if they try to eventually, not extend and go elsewhere. But those are problems for down the road. Um, Joe's saying, I really want the Bruins to squeak out another win. Yeah, I mean, you want them to beat each other up, because it's looking like at the very least that the Rangers are going to, take care of the series in 4 or 5 games. So yeah, you want to see that series go longer. For you want to see it go the distance with the Bruins taking in Game 7. But yeah, the longer that series goes and they beat each other up, that's better for the Rangers. But and again, you want the Bruins to ultimately win it. But even if it's Florida, you want them to come out of that series limping. But another thing to point out too is that the Bruins, what they have, and I'm curious to see after last night's results, if they go to Linus Olmark now, because they have the luxury of having two very good goalies. And while Swayman was fantastic against Toronto, um, this series it hasn't really been going in his direction and having a lot of success. Now that's not all on Jeremy Swayman. I think just the Panthers are such a good team that they're kind of overwhelming the Bruins defense, so he's not getting a lot much help. But for the Bruins, they have I guess you could say that trump card, if you will, where they could throw Linus Olmark in the lineup and hope that changes the trajectory of the series. So don't be surprised if Allmark does start next game. And yeah, again, I agree. I think you might see him in between the pipes in hopes that he could steal a game. But I mean, just for me, when you really look at that series more in depth, it's just I don't think the Bruins have the depth to just compete with Florida. If Marchand and Pasternak aren't going, um, they're really left with Charlie Coyle and DeBrusque, and that I don't think that's enough to will them to victory. So it's just any way you slice it, the Panthers kind of best them in every single category. And then it doesn't help that Bobrovsky is playing fairly well for the Panthers too. So the Panthers pretty much got it all. I mean, when you look at their roster up and down, um, I would say the only goalie that probably best Bobrovsky right now is Igor. Other than that, I think Bobrovsky is the best goalie left in the playoffs. Now I know I was just talking about Swayman and how good he was, but he doesn't have the experience that Bob does. Bob has more experience, so that's why I would give him the nod. But that's why if the Panthers do play the Rangers in the next round, they're similar teams and they're both fast. They're both highly skilled, but the Rangers would have the edge in goal with Igor. This is a tough question. They've both been around for for a long time. Paul Maurice has been around for a real long time. So is Peter Laviolette. Laviolette has a cup. He's been to some other finals. So man, this is a tough question. I mean, for me, I say it's like a toss up, maybe slightly leaning towards Laviolette a little bit more. But they're both fantastic coaches, no doubt about it. And seeing them go head to head in the conference final and seeing who can out game plan the other, that would be a good storyline. But kudos to both those guys because they have both done phenomenal jobs with their hockey clubs this year. Um, you know, Paul Maurice, for a team with the Panthers who made it, almost the whole distance and won the cup. That takes a lot out of you, and for him to get his group to come back and respond the way they did this year, after a lot of people, including a lot of us on this channel, we all agreed that, with Ekblad and Montour missing, were both out until like December or so. That we thought they were going to take a couple steps back, but that wasn't the case. So, um, and they proved everybody wrong, and one of the best teams in the league. Wicked is saying, just curious, whenever teams have openings, it feels like the NHL teams are more likely to use retreads as coaches. Um, yeah, I think that's because I think a lot of general managers see that when a coach gets fired, they look past towards whatever ailed them on the previous team and see that it wouldn't be the same situation there, and that a lot of these coaches that get fired do have good track records. Like your old friend Gerard Gallant, he's not a bad coach. He got fired, and I'm sure he's going to be in the running for some of these openings. So. But then again, sometimes teams do look to new faces. If you look at Jim Montgomery, when he took over Dallas, he was a new coach, came from the NCAA ranks. And granted, I know when Boston took him, you could technically say he was a retread, but he wasn't a guy that had been around for a long time. So you know, it goes both ways. Um, some coaches truly just aren't good. I mean, the Sharks took a chance on David Quinn, and he already got axed, and I think a lot of Ranger fans could tell you that they saw that coming. uh, but yeah, no, there's so many good coaches out there right now. I mean, Todd McClellan's out of a job. Craig Berube, Gerard Gallant, Sheldon Keefe now. And Joel Quenville still, doesn't have a job. Who knows if he ever gets back into the, coaching? But there's a lot of good coaches out there, and I'm curious that, like, for a team like Buffalo, that they went back to old friend Lindy Ruff, because granted, a lot has changed since he was last in Buffalo. They brought him back rather than getting in and while he still is a fresher face, because every guy in the room that's there now weren't there when he last was, but I would have thought they went with someone else. So I thought that was interesting. Alain Vigneault's another one. He's another guy, a lot of experience. I mean, look at Tortorella. Tortorella has been, you could call him, he's been a retread for a while now. Columbus, Vancouver, Rangers, and obviously now he's in Philly. So, but that's just the way it goes. I mean, even in like the NFL, you see coaches that, bounce around from team to team. So, uh, it's just how sports goes. And, yeah, Torts is awesome. I mean, I thought, this guy for me was in the running for the Jack Adams Award, before the bottom fell out in Philly, and there was the whole thing with Bench and Couturier, and there's a lot of speculation if he lost the room when he did that. But I thought for Torts to be coaching a team in the Flyers that everyone expected to be a lottery team, and that they held third in the division up until the last week or two of the season. Kudos to him. I thought he did a fabulous job, and even despite the way the season ended for Philly, how they basically just punted away a playoff spot and gave it away. I still think when you look at his season this past year in Philly, it was a win in my opinion. So, and his post game pressers are just pure cinema. I love it. The guy just says what's on his mind, um, and he does not care. Oh, figure go for about maybe 10 more minutes or so. So, for the 48 of you here watching on an impromptu show on a Saturday afternoon, I appreciate that. But here to answer any questions you got left over these next, final 10 minutes or so. Isles, Rangers, rest of the league doesn't really matter to me. Just like to talk hockey with you guys. But speaking speaking of the Islanders, when it comes to their off season, you talk about Toronto, who obviously going to have a lot of question marks around them. Um, you know, then you have a team like I don't know, Arizona, who has a new owner coming in with a lot of money to spend. I think the Islanders are going to be one of the more interesting teams to watch in the offseason, because uh, really this is the year where you could say that Lou Lamoriello has no choice but to make kind of not wholesale changes, but to make big changes the last couple of years. So they missed the playoffs, and then last year they lost in 6, and then this year they lost in 5. And each of those years in the off season, he didn't make any significant changes. So. And the most interesting part to me was, typically Lou Lamoriello likes to be, the guy, the sole decision maker. And in his end of press conference video, he had said that any roster changes, he was going to work hand in hand with Patrick Waugh. And I thought that was a great sign, because I think Waugh is a brilliant mind. He's the coach of the team. He should have say on, who he wants to stay and who he wants to go, and who he thinks Lou should target. So um, I was happy to hear that Waugh's going to have input on this team. That should give some Islander fans confidence that Waugh that Lou is not just going to go rogue, that he's going to have the ear of his coach. Firestorm asking his question, Mark Phil, if you had to pick one player that will think could be a coach one day in any form, who would it be? That honestly, that's That's a great question. Um, I one guy that kind of immediately comes to mind, um, and it's it's gonna be funny because it's coming from me, but John Tavares. Uh, I think Tavares. I mean, his personality wise, maybe he wouldn't make a good coach, but he is a very cerebral player. The way he approaches the game from his training habits and how serious he takes it. Um, I think actually he has the smarts to do it. But as you hear, many Islander fans have called him before, like he's a robot. He's got like no emotions and stuff. Maybe that's not the best for a head coach, but I just think in the manner of how he thinks the game and how he approaches it from that regard, I think he actually might be a good coach one day if he decided he wanted to do it. It's saying Tavares is awesome. I pick on him. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people pick on him. Islander fan, and now honestly, and now even Maple Leaf fans, because as much as they're not happy with Mitch Marner, they are not happy with Tavares either because of how much he makes on the cap and how his game has felt. How his game has fell off a little bit. They feel that he's kind of holding them back in that regard. So Leaf fans, don't really like him so much anymore. And yeah, the Leafs, the Canadians to an extent, they're always talked about. TSN, Sportsnet, they're always top of mind of these guys just because of the market they're in. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a team that you've been, ever since their core four were essentially assembled. That's all the media would talk about. So you just have to deal with it. It's not going to change. I mean, even when the Maple Leafs were bad, they the media was obsessed with them. So that's I don't think that's ever going to change. And which I know you're not going to be happy about it, just me, but with how it's looking, how they might make serious changes this offseason, they're going to be in the headlines even more this year, especially if they make a major move like trading Mitch Marner or trading Tavares or buying him out. They're gonna run the headlines in the offseason this year. Maxim, do you follow the World Championship? Yeah, I do. I actually saw yesterday uh, Brock Nelson scored. He's representing the Islanders there for Team USA. They got a good squad. And speaking of the World Championships, more this year more than others, I think a lot of players are more willing to go play and represent their countries because with in the next couple of years, um, with the uh, like the condensed tournament they're having. Was it next year, 2 years from now in February, where the league's gonna, in lieu of the All Star game, they're gonna have like what they call it, the Four Nations Challenge, and then the Olympics. I think a lot of these players they want to eventually get on the big stage and represent their country in the Olympics. So when they have the opportunity to play in international competition, they're jumping on it in hopes that they can do well when they're there and get eyes on them, so they can eventually make an Olympic roster. So I think that's why you're seeing some guys rather than resting their bodies that they're going over right now to play. And I don't think that's a coincidence. If that's what I'm saying, I say Toronto's even more top heavy this year than the Oilers. Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. The thing is with the Maple Leafs is that the Oilers are expected to win, but I would say the expectations in Toronto are even more so. And for me, we talked about this a lot on our channel that you know the, the Maple Leafs have ran it back for far too long. I thought they should have blown it up 2 years ago, and they didn't. And the fact that it's taken them this long to where it appears that they're finally ready to do it, it's definitely long overdue. And I'm really curious to see how it plays out, and who they trade, if they convince Tavares to waive, or if they have to settle on moving Marner, or maybe even both. Who knows? Maybe they approach both of them about waiving, and they both waive. That would be something. Wicked is saying, if Marner gets traded, do you think it's draft day type trade or during free agency? Um, Again, that's a great question. Uh, I had heard that after July 1st, Marner is due like a bonus. So any team that's willing to trade for him, they might wait until after that's paid. So they're not on the hook for it. So it might be after July 1st that he does get moved. But that's not a guarantee. He could be moved at the draft or before. Uh, um, or before the draft. And also too, everything is condensed this off season. I think I think the draft I want to say is July 28th. And then obviously free agency is on July 1st. So it's so close. I think that there's going to be a lot of action in those 4 days. But yeah, it's definitely going to be in that time frame. I mean, it's very rare that nothing happens and then he's traded like in the middle of July or August when the league slows down. I mean, that typically just doesn't happen. So, if Mitch Marner is going to get traded, I would say if it doesn't happen on July 1st or July 2nd, I don't see it happening at all. He's saying, "And when will the Utah draft?" Well, Utah, I don't know, are you referring to an expansion draft? If so, you got to remember they're relocating from Arizona, so there's none of that. Or are you asking which selection is Utah picking, which I believe is number 6? But they're moving from Arizona, so there's no Utah expansion draft. They just get the whole Coyotes existing roster. Uh, Yeah, okay. No, so there's no expansion draft. The Arizona Coyotes have become Utah. So there's no expansion draft. They just inherit the Coyotes roster, every player in their system. Um so yeah. Let's see who wants that loser. Are you, Mikey, are you referring to Marner, Tavares? I just don't know who you're referring to. Sorry. Um Yeah, as for the name, so next season they're just going to be called Utah. Like on their jerseys, it's just going to say Utah in some format. And it's not until 25-26 season that they're going to have their new branding. It was announced. So the Utah ownership put out a fan vote. There's like 20, I think there was like 20 or so names. And the fans are going to vote. And then you were allowed to, even though obviously I don't live in Utah, I'm not a fan. I clicked the link and I selected my 4 choices, but everyone gets to pick 4 choices, and then I guess whoever gets the most votes, that's going to be their team name. Um, okay, yeah, Marner. I mean, yeah. Listen, he hasn't really been a playoff performer, but that's not all on him. The Maple Leafs in general have failed in the playoffs and underachieved. So I don't know if it's fair to call him a loser. I mean, I get the sentiment, but I don't think it's all on him, and I think he's a fabulous player. He hasn't reached 100 points yet, but he's come damn near close. I think he's a great player, and I think whoever gets him is going to get a hell of a hockey player. So, I think he's just. I think he needs a change of scenery. Let's just put it that way. I think it's hard to play in Toronto. They expect so much. I mean, he made that comment about we're gods here. Yeah, I think that he would do much better with less pressure, less media attention. That's just my take. I like Blizzard. I voted for. I think I did the Yeti, the Mountaineers, um, the Black. There was a choice. I think it was the Black Diamond, something along those lines. I picked that one, and I forget the fourth. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool what they're doing. They're leaving it up to the fans. You're creating engagement, so a good choice on them. Um, hey Leo, how's it going? Nice to see you on here. Um, Utah Salt Shakers, yeah. There were some funny, like, there were people making jokes about like the Stormin' Mormons and some of these other ones. They were made me laugh. And Martin, yeah, no, he's not. Listen, the guys who play in that market, like I said, the fans view them as, yeah, they view, they're idols. They're looked upon, they're held in high regard. But with that comes great responsibility, per se, to steal that line from comic. But I just think that some players aren't built to play in Toronto. And honestly, I thought Tavares is one of them, because like he's such on the island, he was such a quiet guy, like not a loud personality. Like I thought, the pressure of playing in his hometown would have been too much. But yeah, I think some guys, they're not meant for it. And you can mark it down now. I said it on May 12th, whatever today's date is. I think if Mitch Marner's traded to whatever team, I think he's going to have a career year wherever he goes. I think he's going to play more loose, and I think he's going to have a great year. Okay, as you can see, that's my daughter. He's making an appearance. I know. I'll get her out. I'll get her out. It's okay. But yeah, no, I think he's gonna a fresh start will be best for him. I do subscribe to the fact that I think if there's a way that Toronto can just convince Tavares to waive, and then you keep Mitch Marner, I think that's the ultimate win-win, because then you free up $11 million, and you keep the player that's younger and better. But unfortunately, guys, I think Tavares is going to stick it to the Maple Leafs. And honestly, that's his right, though. This is why, GMs that give out no movement clauses, you have to live with it. You give it out. It's a player's right to stay steadfast and not want to go anywhere. And he earned that right. And who knows? But like I said though earlier, it is human nature. At least for me, I don't know about you guys, but if I was an NHL player and my GM approached me and said, we want to move on from you, essentially saying they don't want me anymore. I mean, do you want to stay in a place where you're not wanted? I mean, no. I think you're going to say screw it. Fine, you don't want me. Trade me here, and I'm going to prove you wrong. That's just my take on it. But some guys maybe don't care about that, and then they wouldn't get offended, and they like where they live, and maybe for family reasons, and and he says no. So, but we'll see what happens. Paris was saying the one thing I do tomorrow is more likely to become an Islander. Uh, I'm glad you brought this up, Firestorm, because I was actually just gonna say there have been some Islander fans that have kind of like speculated, like, if Toronto did waive, if they approached Tavares and asked him to waive, there's some Islander fans that are convinced that if Tavares did agree, that the Islanders would be one of the places that he actually would agree to go back to. And the reasoning behind that is, when he left, he did say how hard of a decision it was for him, and how he was pacing around his pool, and his heart didn't know what to do, because he really did love it here. And if that's all true, he loved it as much as he said, and Toronto doesn't want him anymore. Maybe he goes back to the place that he so-called loved, and that he said was became his home. um but I still think it's a stretch, just because even if he did waive to Toronto, go back to the island, um is Lou Lamoriello going to want to take a guy that's what, 33, making a lot of money? Granted, Toronto would have to retain salary. The Islanders certainly wouldn't take $11 million, but I don't know. I just don't. And also, does he fit anymore? I mean, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the Islanders need to get younger and faster. Tavares was never fast to begin with, and now that he's getting older, he's lost foot speed. So I don't know. I don't know if he fits. Would it be a little bit of a good story, like Tavares coming back home, and you probably have all these people editing the videos of clips of him with the song, I'm coming home, like, yeah. So it would be funny to see. I just don't know how realistic it is. Leo saying the problem, Tavares, I assume he has roots in Toronto. Yeah. So when he was a free agent, there were a lot of Islander fans, sleuths that did detective work, and saw that his wife was from that area and that she was a nurse and that she got a job in Toronto as a nurse. So that's why they were convinced that he was going to end up signing there. So so family certainly plays a role in it. But again, that's what if he did waive, I would imagine he would want to stay close to Toronto. Like I wouldn't think he would be like, okay, yeah, trade me to the Ducks or the Avalanche. I think he would want to stay somewhere close. Appreciate it, just me. I love having you on, and I'm sure maybe if the Rangers win tonight, Phil will do an after the final buzzer, or maybe even if they lose. If not, we'll see you on one of our upcoming streams. You're saying when guys like thinking, yeah, and that's what we took. I think their contracts are starting to wind down. Obviously we don't know them. We don't know what kind of personalities they have. They might want to stay in Edmonton. Maybe they love it there, or maybe they're looking for a change. Who really knows? But for the Oilers to let any of them go, that would be crippling for the franchise. So I would say their ownership group will open up the wallets, give them essentially blank checks, or do whatever they can to keep them. But if they miss the playoffs again, I think maybe it would be more of a story. But they have been making the playoffs and winning at least a round or two. So I don't know if it's a pressing thing on their mind to say, oh, if we get bounced, I want out. Good PR. Yeah, no, that would be good PR. Like I said, it would be a good story. The prodigal son comes home after everything that happened. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's at this point. Let's face it, he's a 60-something point player. Certainly nothing to sneeze at, and I'm not saying he's bad, but I don't think he would be the answer to what the Islanders need. Yeah, would he make them a better team? Yeah, but I think if you're trying to get a guy from Toronto, it's Mitch Marner is the guy that you want to get. The guy that has age on his side, fast, highly skilled. That's the guy to go for. Saying, ran out, enjoy it. What about this, Mike? Maybe if Tavares, they ask him to waive, and again, cap space is an issue, and I don't know if the Rangers would want him. New York's not that far from Toronto. If he was talking about geographical location, maybe he'd waive to go to the Rangers. But again, I know the cap situation, Toronto would have to retain a lot of money. But that would be funny because I think that would make Islander fans hate him even more. It's like you leave, you go to Toronto, and then now you're a Ranger. I think that would rub a lot of Islander fans the wrong way. For me though, honestly, I can care less. It wouldn't if Tavares donned the red, white, and blue. It wouldn't make me hate him more. It would just be it'd be indifferent to me. But that would be pretty funny. Yeah, again, I alluded to this before when we were speculating on Edmonton's future if they lose. I think Skinner had a pretty good year, all things considered. Is he a guy that you win a Stanley Cup with? I don't know, but as I said earlier, Colorado won a cup with Darcy Kemper. The Blues won with Binnington, so it is possible. I just don't know if that's at the top of the list. I think they defense and more depth. We have to go to Buffalo. So I know his uncle, the lacrosse player. I think he played lacrosse in the Buffalo area. I believe. I'm not totally sure on that. So maybe there's a little bit of a connection. Obviously, Buffalo is super close to Toronto. But I mean, Buffalo. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Jets, the football Jets, are the two teams in pro sports that have the longest playoff drought. So if Tavares waived, yes, I know. Consider the location geographically, it would fit. But I mean, why would he waive to go to the Sabres? I mean, the Sabres aren't winning the cup anytime soon. So I get the point that you're making, but I don't see Tavares going to Buffalo because he's not going to win there. Let's see, I don't want anybody who can't done in the playoffs. Yeah, that's true. But again, when you're talking about Marner, Tavares, it's not all on them. It's really not. And especially Tavares. I mean, you think about it. When the Islanders broke their 23-year playoff drought, it was Tavares that scored the winning goal in overtime. Last year when Toronto finally won a playoff series when they beat Tampa, Tavares scored the goal. So he actually is a playoff performer. I mean, he didn't do much this year, but I don't know. I wouldn't say that Tavares can't get it done in the playoffs. It's not all on him. Leo Chin the conversation a bit, but is Sorokin's problem is that he's in his own head. Watching him, it feels like he's been suffering the same way Shesty was early this year. Um, Good point. Earlier in the year, I had actually tweeted out with stats to back it up. A lot of the top goalies in the league from last year, Sorokin included, when you looked at their save percentage and their numbers from this year, um, like none of the top goalies were amongst the league leaders again this year. I don't know if that's coincidence, but like Jake Ottinger, Sorokin. I mean, even Shesterkin's save percentage was only like I think 912 this year. So Vasilevsky was real low. It was really just from last year and this year. It was really just Connor Hellebuck and Swayman that stayed like amongst the top goalies statistically. So a lot of goalies had off years. But in Sorokin specifically, I think the problem there is that he got burnt out earlier on in the year. The way Lane Lambert had them playing wasn't sustainable. They were just bleeding high danger chances on a consistent basis, and he faced the most shots in the NHL. So I think that all weighed on him. I think it got to him. And then, you're right. Goaltending also is a mental part of it. I think, he's used to pretty much dominating everywhere he goes. KHL, his tenure so far in the NHL, and this is the first year that he truly was going through it. And I think it affected him. But I'm not concerned about him. He's too talented and too good to not rebound. I think next year he'll be back amongst the top 5 in statistics and save percentage and shutouts. And even in his exit interview, he made a joke about how he already wanted to start skating on Monday. So that just goes to show, I think, how motivated he is that he's going to be to work hard, work on his game, and rebound. David said Taras will go because look how McDermott and Allen are looked at despite not winning much. He takes a young team to the playoffs. Everyone will love him. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. If he waved to go to Buffalo and they made the playoffs next year, people would love him. But again, he basically willed his way to Toronto, um, and he's going to wave to leave a place to go to a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 12 years and very well miss it again next year. So I don't know. I mean, again, I see your point. I surprised. I mean, my take is he's not going to waive at all. He's going to tell Trey Living and Shanahan to kick rocks. You gave me this no movement clause. I have 1 year left. I'm staying. And then when my contract ends, sure, yeah, you could be done with me. But I don't think he's going to waive. Going to. I think he's going to stay, and that Marner is going to be the guy that gets traded. Because while Marner has the no movement clause too, um, I think Marner, well, unlike Tavares, I think Marner's done with Toronto. Again, I know his comments about how he loved it there, and he's eligible to sign an extension. I just think with the fan pressure on him, um, combined with Maple Leaf saying, we'll send you to a team you want to go to. I think ultimately he says, yeah, sure, trade me. I'm out. And yeah, so look at Saros. Saros was one of those guys included in that. He had a rough year in Nashville. His save percentage was in, I think, the low 900s. A very good goalie. And speaking of UC Saros, this is a guy that could also be traded this offseason. The Devils are looking for goaltending. You've heard also the Maple Leafs. And speaking of Mitch Marner, I know they're high on Joseph Wall, but a Marner for Sauer swap, I think, works realistically in terms of need. So yeah, he had a down year, but he's a guy that could move. I know Barry Trotz still says no, but I mean, let's face it, they have Askarov in the wings. So they certainly could move Saros and maybe get some more scoring punch up front because that's an area that the Predators have always lacked in. How's it going, Fabrizio? Is that right? welcome to the stream. But he said, now I thought Gallant did a terrible job last year, no adjustments. But I have to give credit for one thing, putting the kid line together. Now it seems Kako is playing better with Yeah, Gallant did some good things, but you could see this year with the additional Laviolette just how much of a better coach he is than Gallant. I mean, Laviolette has just pushed the right buttons. He said the right things. He's a guy that has patience with the young guy. He's given Lafreniere a chance. And now he finally truly broke out. Excuse me. So I think Laviolette's done a great job. He's pushed a lot of the right buttons, and if it weren't for some coaches having like really really good years, he could have been a candidate for the Jack Adams. Just there's so many guys like Rick Tocchet and Rick Bonus. They had so much success with their teams that he missed out. But Laviolette has been absolutely great for the Rangers. Leo is saying the thing with Tavares is that he hasn't been playing bad per se. It's just that the Leafs have gone all in on their offense and are not balanced at all. No, they're not balanced at all. And I mean, this goes back to what some people in the media said even when the Maple Leafs signed him. They didn't need him. I mean, they had Marner, they had Matthews, they had Nylander, even though he had at that point his game hadn't reached the levels that is at now. They didn't need him. They could have took Tavares' $11 million. They could have invested it in more, more depth players, a higher end defender. But the Maple Leafs couldn't help themselves from the sexy draw, right? The hometown kid, the former first overall pick. That's rare. These guys hit the open market. He wanted to go there. It was just too much for him, and they signed him. But I think the money was displaced. I thought that they could have went elsewhere with it. But obviously, you can't change the past. And now here we are. He's got 1 year left on his deal. We'll see if he finishes out in Toronto. My guess again is that he does, because I don't think he's going to waive. And I've went on Cap Friendly, and I've went to the buyout calculator, and buying him out does nothing because he was paid so much money in signing bonuses that if they buy him out, it doesn't help their cap situation. So a buyout of John Tavares does nothing for him. So that's not really an option either. So again, I think, barring him having a change of heart and wanting to leave, I don't. I just don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to help them out and waive. I think he's going to stay, and they'll let him ride off into the sunset next summer when he becomes a free agent. But, I said a while ago, I just got 10 more minutes. I just love talking hockey. You guys went much longer, but I'm going to wrap it up soon. I have some things to take care of. But, what about some predictions for tonight? I'll start. I say that the Rangers close out the series, and in true fashion with the trend of the series so far, I say that the Rangers win 2-1. I'm going to say this is a low scoring game today. They take it 2-1, and they move on to the conference final as they await their opponent, either the Florida Panthers or the Boston Bruins. This year. So this question, I guess it really depends the rest of the way with what the Rangers do. If they lose in the conference final, if they lose in the cup final, if they win the Stanley Cup, I think a lot of that will determine which direction they go. I know they have Igor has one more year left on his deal, then they're going to have to re-sign him. That's going to be like a Sorokin type of comparable, more than $8 million. So they have some decisions to make. Lindgren, while he's a warrior, I think you'd love to have him on your team. He often gets hurt. So I don't know if they're going to want to invest the money in him to keep him. So it's possible that, they do look to move him. Kako is an interesting one. Kako hasn't taken off. But the problem with him is that his trade value isn't really high right now. So honestly, I don't know what they do with him. If they were to move him, I don't think they would get much back. So maybe he stays. That's my guess. Let's see. Leo's saying the Canes will come up fast, trying to Rangers win 2-0. Bad one. You say hurry, Canes of all the pressure. Wicked is saying, I think 3-2. I do think the Rangers close the series out. Rangers win 4-1. Okay, so you think it's going to be a little bit of a lopsided of the game. That's fair. All right. I like it. Yeah, I do see this being a close game. I said before, winning the fourth game is the hardest of all games to win. I think Carolina is going to come out really hard. PNC Arena is going to be buzzing. If the Hurricanes can get the first goal or even the first two goals, I think that will go a long way in determining the outcome of the game. But I think the Rangers take it. And for all the Ranger fans out there watching, if you guys do lose tonight, honestly, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't get too upset about it. And again, I acknowledge you never want to give a team belief or let them back in a series, but even if the Hurricanes win today, let's face it, you're up 3-1, and you go back home to MSG, where that has been a complete house of horrors for the Hurricanes. They have a lot of trouble winning there. They didn't win there in 2022 when they played. So I don't want to say the game doesn't matter, because you're trying to move on, and you want the rest. But even if the Rangers lose tonight, I wouldn't worry about it. They're well in control of the series. So honestly, the only way, or only reason why, if I were a Rangers fan, I would start to worry a little bit, is if, let's say, the Hurricanes won tonight, and then they go back to MSG for Game 5. They win again, and now you're talking Game 6 in Carolina. Maybe then you kind of start to maybe worry a tad. But other than that, honestly, it doesn't matter if the Rangers lose tonight. That's just my opinion. Yeah, David, it's not that bad if the Rangers lose tonight. Like I just got done talking. The Rangers are well in control of the series, and the chances of the Hurricanes winning 4 in a row, or even 3 in a row is pretty slim. I mean, how many times in the NHL has a team come back from 3-0 in a series? 4, 5. Not many times. So, trying to think of you guys help me out if you can. The most recent one. I know it was the Flyers and Bruins. Was that in 2010? Wasn't it the Flyers that came back from 3-0? Or am I getting reversed? Was the Bruins? No, it was the Flyers that came back from 3-0. And actually, now that I think about it, I think not only did they come back from 3-0, but I think in Game 7, I think Boston was actually up 3-0 in that game, and they blew it. But I thought there was another time after that it happened again. I just can't remember at the moment here. But anyway, it hasn't been done that many times, so I really wouldn't concern myself with it too much. So, but anyway, all right, guys, I'm gonna go, and thank you for the 40 the 40. Actually, so yes, the Kings. What year is that though? I'm having trouble. The Kings 3-0. What was it? Was it 2012 when they won the cup, or was it in 2014 when they won the cup that the Kings came back from 3-0? That's gonna annoy me now. Yeah, and maybe it might have been. When are you gonna come? 2 minutes. It might have been 14. I don't know. David's saying it was 2012, their first cup. He might. I really can't remember. Now I gotta look it up. Let's see. It's funny. The good old AI on Instagram now. You can ask it and it comes up quickly. How many teams have come back from 3-0 to win a series in the NHL? I know the Islanders did it in the 80s to the Penguins. And then I think it was done in the 40s. The Maple Leafs. Yep. All right. Here's our answers, guys, ladies, gentlemen. 1942, the Maple Leafs against the Red Wings in the Stanley Cup Finals. 1975, the Islanders against the Penguins in the Stanley Cup Quarterfinals. The 2010 Philadelphia Flyers against the Bruins in the Eastern Conference Semifinals. And the 2014 Los Angeles Kings against the Sharks in the Western Conference first round. So Wicked was right. Yeah, for the Kings, it was 2014. So yeah, 4 times it's been done in NHL history. So that's how rare it is. Don't think the Hurricanes are becoming the 5th. So no worries there, New York Ranger fans. All right. Well, guys, again, I'm gonna run. As you see, I have my helpers here. But thanks for tuning in. Kind of like on this, impromptu Saturday afternoon show. Enjoyed talking hockey with you guys. And again, I haven't talked to Phil or Marc, my co-host, what their plans are, but stay tuned. Maybe depending on the outcome of the game tonight, there is a after the final buzzer for the Rangers. If not, I would imagine that we'll have our weekly show on Wednesday. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.